we had a customer just report a 42% increase in throughput dollars. It's not the same as a 42% increase in sales. This is way better.
The secret sauce for the Kanban board to create velocity through your hidden factory is to limit your work in process. It's a simple solution, but it is mind-blowing. My favorite improvement was...
I'd appreciate if you stopped talking about my company right now. How much per month extra on top of what they were doing before you got there? Welcome everybody to another episode of On the Shop Floor. Today we have a very exciting episode in store, and I'm sitting in the studio looking across the table at the one and only Lynn Thompson. So before we jump into it, the subject is quite catchy because we had a customer just report a 42% increase in throughput dollars. So I'm sure, is that true?
It's true. It's wild, but it's true.
Okay, good. And so before we jump into that, we want to make a few announcements. And the first announcement we want to make is that the finishing challenge that I've taken on is alive and well. My portion is now complete. Racing a $1 million finishing line with just our sanding robot. So everybody can stay tuned for that on our social media channels. What else do we got? Oh, IWF.
Full day.
Full day for us at IWF. So everybody mark your calendars on August 5th. Lynn and I will be at the IWF hosting a full day lean manufacturing symposium.
Don't miss it.
Don't miss it. Don't walk, run, get your tickets. And then of course, throughout all of this weird and wild stuff that we talk about, if you want to find us, you can always find us at quantumlean.ca. Those are our announcements. Now, let's unpackage this 42% increase in throughput dollars. Now, hopefully people have been tuned in, but just as a little refresher, what is a throughput dollar?
That's whatever gets across the finish line today. So whatever sales I've got across the finish line, which in this case, in a cabinet shop, I would consider that final assembly, wrapped and strapped, ready to go.
Okay. And the throughput dollar calculated is sales dollars minus material.
Minus material.
Okay.
Yeah.
And included everything else. So it's not the same as a 42% increase in sales. This is way better. Way better.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because you're already paying for all that overhead already.
That's right.
Right?
Okay. So here we go. I want to start at the beginning. I had nothing to do with this. This was you at a client's place, and they called us and said, "Hey, we need some help." Okay. What was your step one?
Well, step one is usually train everybody in the building, help them kick off their lean transformation, and do an assessment while we're there. And in the beginning, they actually said, "Hey, we need you to come down and help speed up our cabinet shop," which is what we normally get. That's perfectly normal. But we know that typically we want to speed up the hidden factory. Not all the time, but a lot of the time we end up going to the hidden factory first. And in this case, that's exactly what happened.
So they called saying, "Hey, my factory is not producing enough." And you got there, looked at the factory, looked at the office operations, which is our hidden factory, and
realized that if we speed up the factory, we're going to be in really big trouble if we speed up the factory first. So that's why we focused on the hidden factory first. Got them all sorted out, a nice big buffer with metrics in place. And that was another podcast we did on metrics. How are you measuring? How are you keeping an eye on these buffers? Do you even have established buffers? So we did all that. And then we could see, which was brilliant because this is what most people are lacking. And then sales could see. sales and design and estimating could see where they should focus and when they should stop looking for sales and get some stuff across their finish line to the shop and keep that buffer nice and steady, because the shop will always slow down to the rate it's being fed. So we did that first, and that worked very well. We did a value stream mapping exercise in the hidden factory and quickly realized that there was some key issues there. So we shored that up. And then the next visit was to
So was that all in the first visit? Sorry to cut you off there.
No, the first visit was training and assessment.
Okay.
So everybody in the building's trained. Second visit was hidden factory value stream mapping.
Okay.
And at the end of that, we had the tools ready up on the Kanban board set up so that they can see their buffers, their defined buffers, when to stop producing here, when to focus over here, and then the metrics. We started setting up the metrics so that we could see, and then we had some baseline data for the hidden factory and the shop floor, and then went back and focused on the shop floor. And that was where we've had another podcast on this, identify the bottleneck. How are we measuring the bottleneck? We did some layout changes, a little bit of labor reallocation.
Sure. Hang on. Before we get to the shop floor, I mean, the bulk of the improvement seemed to happen not like before you even went out to the shop. So how did you make that visual for the hidden factory? Because right now everybody sits at computers typing away. So when you say now everyone could see, I mean, unbox that for me a little bit. What does that?
Yeah.
Just slow down.
Okay.
Take a deep breath.
Just excited. It's the Kanban board.
Right.
Right.
But not Kanban in the sense of purchasing, Kanban in the sense of like.
No, this is to manage workflow.
Okay.
So this is essentially setting up buffers in the hidden factory, making it visual. It's up on a wall, and we can see the size of the buffers should be. And the secret sauce for the Kanban board to create velocity through your hidden factory is to limit your work in process, just like we do in the shop. It's exactly the same, just a different tool, but exactly the same concepts. So if we limit the work that we can have in our work in process column, then now we've created velocity. So now we've shortened our lead time of work through the hidden factory. And then there's clear start and stop signals. When should I stop focusing on this new sale over here and focus on this one that's been sitting out there waiting for the answer from the customer for the last 2 weeks? We need to get that one. We've done all the work to it. It's just so close.
Right.
Let's get it across the finish line. Let's go.
And so is it visual? Like when you walk in the office, Can you see? So it's up on a wall.
It's up on a wall, 15-minute meeting every morning with that group of people. Any questions, any concerns? If I'm stuck with a customer, the whole team is saying, how can we move that today? How can we get that to go from this column to this column? It's driving focus for the entire team to focus on the right thing.
Right.
We're all going to make the wrong decision if we don't have that up there. We're all going to focus on the things that we want to focus on, the things that we think we should be focusing on, and not on the things that we don't want to do today.
I'm listening to you. I'm like, God, I do that a lot.
It's a simple solution, but it is mind blowing. The level of visibility that you get out of this. You have to try hard not to focus on the right thing. If you have that, it doesn't cost you anything. It's a whiteboard,
right?
It's all stickies, magnets, whatever you want to use. I would suggest don't jump into it and put it in an electronic system right away or ever, but that's another topic of conversation. Start out simple.
Man, we're in a world where it's like everybody has some computer savvy person that's just going to jump on there. And I mean, there's programs that lend themselves to this, like Trello. We use Trello, and it is a Kanban board, electronic Kanban board. But I mean, I'll tell you, I fail to look at it every day.
There's something about someone touching it and moving it physically. It's not that software is not capable. It's more than capable. But there's something about engagement, accountability. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it, but it's a quick meeting, stand-up meeting, 15 minutes. You're all standing in front of the board, and it's easy to get it off the ground and get it working. And don't worry about getting it perfect the first time. But that was the tool. That was the winning tool so that we could create that visibility and create that velocity in the hidden factory and keep that buffer. We
And
measure
okay.
that buffer. We look at that buffer every day. There's a number of cabinets we want in that buffer. And if it starts to get low, we go, oh, we need to focus over here again.
And how did you determine the size of that buffer?
Just X number of days. I mean, everybody's different, but you're going to say, give me, I don't know, 10 days worth of cabinets in the buffer.
Right. So there's nothing scientific about that one. Just what's your comfort level on holding inventory in your hidden factory, versus lead time?
It depends on what could go wrong.
Right.
It's all about Murphy. It's not about what size you want your buffer when things are going well. It's how big of a buffer do you need to recover when things go wrong? And in the hidden factory, it's a bigger buffer because it's now customer dependent. These aren't jobs that have necessarily been approved yet. There's a lot of things that could go wrong.
Right. Yeah. Mrs. Smith takes forever to pick her handles.
And someone said, hey, we thought the job site was going to be ready. Now it's not. So now you're changing things before it gets to the shop. No problem. But you're going to be moving those jobs around. So you want to have enough in there that you can move things around.
Gotcha. Okay. So did some training. Everybody's thinking the same. Did a value stream mapping exercise to expose the waste in the hidden factory. Maybe just touch on that quickly. Like what did that look like for them? What came out of it? What was like the number 1, 2, 3 takeaway from the value stream mapping?
So the value stream mapping is essentially just getting all of your processes, literally mapping them up on the wall so we can see them, and going through identifying where the big loops are, and the waiting time and all of that. And they're very similar, especially with custom cabinet companies. I kind of know what's going to come up. I'm not usually surprised, but I will tell you that in this particular case, 2 people in the hidden factory were mostly responsible for, the design and engineering. And these 2 girls in particular were scared, and they just looked like they were going to cry. And I'm not exaggerating. They were not happy. They were overwhelmed, completely overwhelmed.
Oh, like in their work before
in their work.
Oh, okay.
And
right.
the questions that we were asking them through this process, because we're basically unpacking all of their processes, right? So it's a little uncomfortable sometimes to do that in front of everybody, but you could tell that they were very overwhelmed and very stressed out. And what happens when you're very overwhelmed and very stressed out?
Yeah. Decisions maybe aren't the best.
Right. You're like, you go from being, creative to fight or flight mode. You just don't think straight, and you don't make great decisions, and you rush. We all know what happens when you rush. Lots of mistakes, lots of defects. So, but by the end of the value stream mapping session, when we had our prototype Kanban board up there that they had helped developed, I saw them smile and laugh for the first time. And I was blown away by the transformation just in their physiology and how they were carrying themselves. They could see hope now.
Right.
They could see hope. They could see, we'll be able to manage this. We have a system where we can manage this now. So that was, I would say, the most profound thing for me as a witness or a facilitator, was seeing that level of transformation in some people that just looked like they were just so done,
right,
so overwhelmed. So that was pretty cool. And I've gone back and checked on it since then in subsequent visits and watched the stand-up meeting, and they're all involved. There's 4 of them up there, and they're all involved, asking each other questions and giving each other updates, and that's all it is.
Awesome. Oh man, I get goosebumps when, as soon as you're doing something right, when you create a process and everyone smiles. That you can't hide a smile.
Smiling and laughing. Just everything changed.
Awesome.
It really did. Yeah, that was the biggest outcome, and that usually is the biggest outcome of the value stream mapping.
Okay, so now we've identified a system that we can operate from using a value stream mapping tool. We've got now the system up on the wall in the form of a working Kanban scheduling board, and work is starting to flow through there. People are able to manage their buffers now, so they know where they should be working. Then it was another visit for the shop floor, or like what happened next?
So now it was to the shop floor. Now we had the patient was stable, right? We reduced the batch sizes in the hidden factory, and they were filling up the buffer, and the buffer was stable. And that's all we cared about at that point, right? You're always going to go back and make improvements, but that was the biggest, the patient was in critical condition, and now we got the patient stable. Now it's time to go out to the shop floor and see. Now that we have a nice big buffer to pull from, now we can say, how do we speed up the shop? So a lot of time in Gemba with a production manager and key people and key processes. And what's the first thing we want to do when we go to the shop? Based on if anybody saw a previous podcast.
Might be something like, might look like find the bottleneck.
Find the bottleneck. Find the bottleneck. Is it where we want it to be? Can we work with this? Right. And then whatever, I mean, we spent time, it wasn't hard to find the bottleneck. It never is. Bottleneck is in finishing. But in particular, this company had some disparity or separation between finishing and staining and sanding. So the first thing we did was say, let's just put this all together. This is a team. This is a finishing team. So let's get them close together. So some layout changes, some small layout changes, but also to get them thinking as a finishing team. Mm-hmm. Because if I'm over, across the aisleway over in my area and I'm staining, I'm staining. I'm not finishing. I'm not sanding. I'm not, there's that. I'm an island.
Yeah, the invisible borders that are really hard to cross.
And you think differently. So we got them within proximity so we could establish some flow, right? We established buffers, buffer sizes, taught people how to read the buffers, what to do when this buffer's full, where to go. So things like that. That's just the beginning. And then we started looking at what kind of process improvements can we make, because this is the bottleneck. So any improvement we can make is going to increase our throughput.
What was your favorite improvement in that area?
My favorite improvement was establishing the buffers and getting them to set up as a team for flow, because that wasn't there already. So that was a big one at that point. Getting people to understand that they're all, when my buffers low or empty, I now know where to go.
Right.
And go and what to work on. It's not about what are the people doing. It's about what's the product doing. If watch the product. If the product's not flowing, we got a problem. It's not about you being busy and having something to do.
Yes, we say watch
the product moving and flowing like we want it to. And you have to teach people that, because traditionally we've always thought if I'm working hard, then I'm doing a good job.
That's right. That's right.
So it really is setting up the systems to help them see where to go, and they are either seeing flow or lack of flow, and then what to do about it.
I mean, that point is worth hitting home when it comes to, we get wrapped up in watching people, and that train of thought of, I just have to stay busy. I have to stay busy. Like, to get someone to stop working is like, it's so hard. I literally just had this conversation with my team yesterday, and I had my production manager aside, and I said, there are times when it's more important to watch the baton than the runners, And so it's like, is the product going where we want it to go when we want it to go? Yes. Okay. Don't worry if they're standing there for 30 seconds with nothing to do, and they panic too, right? Everybody panic, like, oh, I need something to do. And more often than not, keeping people busy screws up everything.
Yeah. They're grabbing at the wrong straws at that point, right? They're reaching for something just to keep busy. And typically it's the wrong decision, because they can't see the overall picture, right? If they could see the big picture, they'd see something's wrong. And we can't blame them. That's where the buffers come in. But also, I put our productivity timer up there at the bottleneck, because I know if we want to hit X number of cabinets a day, then a cabinet needs to come through here every X number of minutes. So in this case, I wanted a cabinet coming out of there every 28 minutes. So we put the productivity timer up there on a big TV, and so that the person who's in that finishing area can see. And then if the screen goes red, we know we need to go help that guy and find out, what's wrong. Is it quality? Are you being fed on a regular basis? Is your, whatever the issue is, or at least capturing it and doing something about it.
It's staggering to me how anyone runs without that timer. I can't even imagine going to work, looking at my control point and not seeing that timer running. And so anyway, for people who are listening, we have a productivity timer on our website. It's free. Go to quantumlean.ca and just run it right off our website. And it tells you how long you've been working on the thing you're working on. It tells you your average time that it takes per piece for the day. And then that you can program it that the screen turns red, yellow, and green for your visual control for your team leaders. And like I know people that know about this timer and don't use it. And I'm just like smashing my head on the table. Like, guys, you're bowling into a curtain. Like how do you know when to pass the product on? How do you know when to call for help? People just like struggle and do their best.
How do you know how you're doing? And how do you recover if you don't know you're not doing well? Right, nothing's going to happen.
Bar none, the most powerful tool on the internet that is least used by the human population.
I will caution you if you go use that productivity timer, because if you don't roll it out correctly, it will be perceived as a hurry up. I want you to go faster. We'll never ask you to work harder or faster ever. So that's a clear sign something's wrong. It's to say, this is the talk time for this product. And if something's wrong, you're going to go over your talk time. Okay, then we got to figure out what it is. But it's not meant to be punitive, and it's not meant to be out there to rush people. So you got to make sure you roll it out carefully. So that was, from a finishing perspective, those are the highlights.
So we're on the shop floor. We're using the productivity timer. The office is keeping up. They're doing great. And now we've uncovered the bottleneck being in finishing. Shocker. Now, every woodworker on earth just went, yeah. So what's next? Like how did you exploit that bottleneck? Because the office can do as good as they want until someone builds more stuff that comes out the other end. That 42% hasn't happened yet. So where did that 42% increase start to manifest?
Well, with the productivity timer, it kind of confirmed what we suspected already. We needed another person in finishing, in prep, right? That was something we knew, but couldn't prove, really. At some point you have to prove it to someone so you can get what you want. So that's what we did. We put that timer in there. We could see that, especially within certain product mixes, there was a struggle there. We'd have to bring some labor in there. But ultimately we knew that we needed one more person, and we had the data at that point.
And so did you leave the control point of the factory in the finishing, or did you shift the control point somewhere else?
We left it in finishing. I would like to move it somewhere else, but there's just so much opportunity right now where it is. So, we can move it back to assembly, which is where my gut tells me we should be. Yeah. But they've just had some wild success right now.
Hey man,
where
if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
So I'm like, let's just wait until we have a reason to move it back there. Let's stabilize, because there's been so many changes in finishing. Let's just stabilize for a while. Let's work this out. And then once we're happy with this, then what's the next big break, right? Okay. Because they've met their first goal at this point now, right? But getting that person isn't always easy, right?
So how did you convince the higher ups? Like, because hiring people is scary and expensive, and we're like, what if we don't really need them? Especially at a bottleneck operation. That's anyway, I'll let you elaborate. But so how did you convince them? Like what tipped the scales to get them to hire someone?
Well, the timing was perfect, because I was doing a strategic planning session with this company At the same time, we had one scheduled. So back in February, so January, we knew we needed someone. February, we had a strategic planning event scheduled for this because there's multiple companies involved here. So we were doing that. And that's the place where if you have any capital purchases that you'd like to make or labor, you're going to bring that with you to your strategic
Right.
planning session and say, hey, here's what I foresee I'm going to need in the next 18 months, 24, 36, depending on what's going on in the business. I need to know how I'm going to
Man.
make that happen. Right. So it could be technology, it could be people. In this case, we knew it was pretty simple. We didn't need to go to technology yet. We just said, hey, we need a person. That was presented at the strategic planning session with all of the executive committee there, and everyone agreed, yep, okay, go ahead. Within 2 weeks, they had someone hired and they met their goal. Just recently, that's where we got the 42%, the news about the 42% increase in throughput dollars. By no means are they finished with that. There's much more to be had there. Lots of capacity that they're going to be able to find in there now.
Wow. So
Before
what
they
I'm
move on.
what I'm hearing about this company is they're strikingly smart. Like they identified that they needed some help. They called an expert to come in, and usually it ends there. People aren't excited about the fluffy stuff. They're like, oh, we're gonna sit around and have a strategy planning session with some stranger. Like we all our egos are probably in the way. And I think I'll quote Paul Akers, and he said, your ego will stop you from the thing you need the most. And so I'm just like, wow, this company is really smart. They're just asking for all the right help. But now that we're on to, I would love to just let this flow in that direction of the strategic plan. But for everyone listening, like, why bother? Like, why not just come to work and work hard and hope for the best all day? I even just say that, and I'm like, God, that's stupid.
Well, that's what most people do.
Right.
In that range of businesses,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
once you get to a certain size, you can't not do
Right.
Everyone else will make you do a strategic plan. But small to mid-sized businesses probably can't see the immediate gain and just look at it as an expense.
Right.
I can't afford to have my people out of the building. I can't afford to,
100%.
to hire someone to help us. But it's a matter of like, what if you don't have a strategic plan? There's a lot of flailing. I call it thrashing. There's a lot of thrashing going on. There's a lot of competing priorities. There's a lot of naysayers. You do not have an aligned team. You don't know what your business plan priorities are. So you're trying to get it all done and then nothing's getting done. There's probably not great metrics. I mean,
I'd appreciate if you stopped talking about my company right now. If only I could hire someone to help me with my strategic plan.
It goes back to metrics. People generally aren't measuring very well. Do we have the right people in the right roles? Do we have the right roles? First of all, do we have the right people in the right roles? So many things come up with the strategic planning. But what's your competitive analysis? What does it look like for the next, 6 months, a year? Do we need to get technology in? Do we need to change our direction in sales? Do we need to drop this part of the company and just focus on this part? I mean, you and I have gone to customers where they were trying to get us to get their shop to go faster, and we just did a strategic plan instead because we said we think you're wildly going to change your direction here.
Yeah,
it's interesting that we somehow we think if we don't do the right thing up front, we're okay. We got this. But you're paying the piper.
Yeah, you're gonna pay or you're gonna pay.
You're paying now or you're paying later. And when you pay later, it's always more. And it's not just money.
Yeah.
It's anguish. It's morale.
I had a guy once working with us, and he said something, and it was a little bit profound at the time, but I never forgot it. And he said, when you have something in your head, it's in your head. It's not in the world yet. But if you simply just take out a pen and write it down, then now it's in the real world. And the real world can start helping you manifest these things. And I was like, little flaky for me at the time. But do we have time for my quick story? Sure. So for, 20 years or however, 25 years, we did millwork and now we're doing doors and some machinery. Um, Probably, did I put a date on it? Can't see it.
You, can, you should
Uh,
get your eyes
I
done.
did. I didn't put a date on it. But anyway, so I was in that situation. I was frustrated and I was like, just like, where do I want to go? And how are we going to get there? And I think establishing that first high target is the hard part. And all I did was pick a number I wanted to sell my company for. And that was it. And I'm like, okay, I want to sell for X dollars. So for that to happen, I'm going to get 4 times net profit. Okay, I need to make X dollars. Well, at X% of profit, I need to do this much in sales to get to that number. And I was able literally in 15 minutes to disseminate that all the way down to what I had to start doing today to make that happen in 4 years. And and it was like I wrote it down and it was so profound because the minute I wrote it down, it was like magic. It just started happening. And I've taken my notes from that down. I don't know if they'll ever show up, but for everyone on YouTube. And I framed them and these hang on the wall of my house. But this was how basic my first ever strategic plan was just scribbled down on a notepad and it started happening. And I'm like, can you imagine like when you do a proper strategic plan with a facilitator that knows what they're doing and your whole team is aligned and off you go?
I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, 42%. That's what happens.
Well, just think about, there's a lot of people out there that have great ideas and they're working on them. Is that what we want that person working on right now? Right? Is it part of our strategic plan or not?
Right.
It may be. Therefore, I want to know that you're working on that. And I want to know when we're going to get there. But if you're working on stuff that has nothing to do with our strategic plan, that's a problem. And then there's a lot of confusion. You think we should be doing this. I think we should be doing that. Now we're not working together. So it's either not getting worked on or we're constantly battling about it. And the energy that gets spent on things that have nothing to do with your priorities is massive.
Is it moving the company forward or
Right.
not? And not, do you want to work on it? Not, is it fun, Brad?
It's just, you have an aligned team now, whether you like it or not. This is where we're going. You don't have to be excited about it because, we can't make everybody excited on our vision, but you've agreed to it.
Right.
Okay, I get it. This is what we're doing. This is my role in what we're doing. Either you're in and you're working on it. Maybe someone just needs to get out of the way and stop pushing against it. Right.
Okay.
But that alignment is a big part of it.
So then, just for everyone wondering, like at the highest level, what elements are in a strategic plan that someone can ponder? And while you think about that, I'd just like to comment that there is so much intrinsic value in having a facilitator. For anyone who's listening and they're thinking, oh, I'll just do that with my team and save the money or whatever, forget it. You need to be part of that planning, and you can't facilitate and think with your team at the same time. So I just want to emphasize, like, having that facilitator, and it can be, I'm not saying call us and hire up, just get a facilitator and, it will go better. So now when you're facilitating, the high level, what are some things that are included in that strategic plan?
Well, we're asking everybody to come with like the issues that they face today. So everybody gets a chance to get their issues out on the table. That's their homework before the strategic planning exercise starts. But then we're just review things like mission, vision, values. Do you have them defined already? If you don't, let's define them. Because if you don't have that, who are we?
Right.
What does this company stand for? Every decision we make should go back to those mission, vision, values. Does that fit with our mission? Okay, yeah, good. We're going to do it. Makes decision making a lot easier, especially when things just happen and you have to react quickly. So it's good to get clear on that. It's clarity for everybody and every aspect of the business. That's what ends up coming out of out of this. And then we do, so that takes a long time to go through the issues we face, make sure you captured everything and prioritize it. And that's going on an action item list, how we're going to solve those problems.
So people are already feeling heard, and I mean, like,
Oh yeah.
that's
Yeah.
okay. Cool.
I mean, you can't ask people for their feedback and then just walk away, right? We're doing something with it. And then, and they're hearing each other's, the bigger the company, the more, disparate the groups are and the less conversations that are happening. So the conversation that's happening that week, that's a team building exercise on its own. That's another result of that. But then we do things like the SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, and threats. So you're looking at your company saying, okay, what are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? Do we want to shore up any weaknesses? If not, do we want to build on these strengths? Do we want to change the market that we're going after? You're doing a competitive analysis between you and the rest of the market. So you're planning strategically, how are we going to beat these guys next year? Or what are we going to dial back? Maybe you're going to change what you focus on, what products you focus on.
This
right?
is reminding me of a conversation we had with a customer for about 3.5 hours one day, where he was focused on 28 different things, and and we started asking pointed questions, and he hadn't even considered it before. So I guess when you're doing these strategic plans, like you're throwing all that out on the table. Hey, we make, like, in his case, he made everything from railway ties to high-end furniture. Those are kind of different, right? So, like, how could his team focus, and I'm sure, well, what about, God, we just got the phone with another guy. He had 3 different companies.
Yeah.
And, like, when you start unboxing all of that stuff and say, where are we focusing? Like, generally speaking, and correct me if I'm wrong, or you think I am, whether you have 3 or 5 different companies, or 2, doesn't matter, more than one, or you have more than a few very different products, same effect, right? Like,
yeah, it doesn't have to be more than one company.
Yeah.
No, but the other thing I think that we haven't touched on too is that with this strategic planning, what usually happens is the guys at the very top, either the owners or the CEOs, they're done. They're tapped out. They're tired, and they say that they want more time for their families. So it's about, because that's what happens when you try to work on everything all the time. Eventually you get overwhelmed and tapped out and exhausted, and now you're no good to anybody, especially your family at home, which is why you did the whole thing in the first place. Yes. So morale is a big one. Everyone's getting their input. You're looking at what your possible hurdles are, what could possibly go wrong in the next 24 months. And you're, should we prepare for this? What are the risks in this industry? Ultimately what comes out of it is a business plan priority list. Here's the priorities we have this year. Nothing else. We're not working on anything else. Just this. Here's how we're going to measure our success. Here's our target goals. So we've got the measurements, we got the goals. Here's how often we're meeting to make sure we're staying on track. And here's how we're going to monitor that. And then in that comes we're also bringing our labor allocation, our labor wants and needs, and capital requests and all that stuff is all happening there. So that if I say I want to go out and buy a new forklift, the whole team agrees to that. Hopefully, if they don't, then they don't. It doesn't get approved. But if they do agree to it, now we don't have all these side conversations later on of people complaining, well, I wish I had got that money. I could think of a better use. There's a lot that chews up a lot of energy and a lot of time and takes people away from what we'd really want them to be doing because they didn't agree with what happened with someone's decision.
Right.
But this is collectively making this decision. This is that alignment that I'm talking about. When you're leaving that meeting, whether you like it or not, I'm getting my forklift. Case closed. We're not talking about it anymore.
Right.
The team approved it because they saw the need, they saw the payback, whatever it was. But you're presenting that as well. It makes you dig a little deeper and be prepared to present what you're asking for. I want to see is, what's the return on investment? How long is it going to take us to pay this off? What are we going to get out of this? Can we do it this other way? How are we going to prove, there's all those questions come up, and you're basically putting your best pitch out there, and the team's deciding.
Man, I'm trying to, in my head, I'm trying to like recap the steps of what went down. How long did this take? Hang on, this 42%. We started in when?
That's the measurement from January to now.
So
4
January,
months.
So first quarter,
Yeah.
a 42% increase in throughput dollars. So for everybody who's listening to this, here's the steps. First, make sure that your hidden factory, which is your office operations, is going to be able to feed the shop at the rate that you're planning for your sales.
That includes the sales that in your area you think you're going to be able to get them. Then can you process them in the hidden factory?
Right.
Yeah.
And then only then do you move to the shop and try and help the shop. Once you're confident that the shop needs the help, we're going to identify the bottleneck. We're going to exploit the bottleneck. We're going to subordinate all activity to the bottleneck. Then we're going to start that process all over again and just keep improving that bottleneck. And then once all the low-hanging fruit is gone, you can breathe, you're not drowning, you probably should really start thinking strategically about where you want to take that company and how you're going to do it and who's coming with you. So is that a good little roadmap?
Yeah, that's great.
So
that's great.
4 months, you gotta get the help you need, or if you're ambitious, go at it on your own. But that kind of summarizes how this company went from where they were to a 42% in 1 quarter, which I don't think is anything short of staggering. I mean, we posted that in our Quantum Lean community, and it just like the thread just blew up. And it's like, what? How'd that happen? So
yeah, the only addition was 1 person in sanding.
Well, physically, but like you've changed the way they approach the work, the way they organize the work.
I'm saying the only thing that the only added resource that goes on their books, like as a permanent hire, is one resource, which means now that their target just went up. Right? Their target just went up.
But they're hitting it.
No, it's going to go up again.
Oh yeah.
Now that we got a person in there, the target now we have a new target.
Right. I'm looking at, I got the papers in front of me here, and I'm looking at their throughput chart, and I'm just like, it looks like a ski hill. It's not a gradual change. So, and I think we probably should mention, there has to be a pretty good leader at the top for all of this to be unfolding.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Like I've never seen engaged before.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Constant, but also willingness to measure, and willingness to share the information, and willingness to just try it, run the experiment. All right, let's try that. But absolutely, you have to have truly engaged leadership at the top, and the hidden factory and the factory as well. The managers in there were outstanding. You can't just do this without great people.
Right.
But you have to give them the tools. They just didn't have the tools.
Yeah. Well, my mom used to tell me, you can't know what you don't know. I remember very distinctly when I read that Toyota book, 25 years, 30. Oh God. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that book had been sitting on the shelf for the better part of 100 years, and we were doing it the hard way. So you can't know what you don't know, and that's why you travel all over the world teaching people this fun stuff. That throughput dollar increase is how much per month extra on top of what they were doing before you got there?
$80,000 a month.
$80,000 a month
right now.
And going up, and hopefully, if they do it right, up and up and up, forever, and till they decide they don't want to build cabinets anymore.
Yeah, well, and that's including a 3 to 5 year strategic plan.
Right.
Right.
But anyway, so I hope that helps put people's mind at ease a little bit, that, you know, it's like everything else. Like we don't hesitate to spend $150,000 on a CNC router, or spend $100,000 on a robot sander, or spend, you know, $1 million on a finishing line or something. And then when it comes to the soft stuff, the planning, the people, the culture, we're like, oh, I can't spend money on that. But I don't know. The result is faster and cheaper.
It's like all of the questions that we have. What if you do this? And then we always say, but what if you don't?
Right. All right. Well, I hope that puts some people's mind at ease, and they appreciate a little bit of our transparency. But so I think that's it. We're at, wow, perfect timing, 45 minutes. That's 15 minutes over our promised 30-minute podcast for everybody. So that's it for us, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Now, just to recap, don't forget, we have the Brad taking on the $1 million finishing line in a flat out race. We've got the IWF symposium happening on August 5th, full day with Brad and Lynn. And if you want to find us, we're easy to track down. quantumlean.ca. Until next time, have yourself a wonderful week. Don't stop improving, and we'll see you all soon.